Hello, and I am Chico West with Filter Optional.
I don't know why you've decided to open that way. Hello, I'm Chico West. No, hi, welcome to Filter Optional.
I like that. Welcome to Filter Optional.
Yes, I'm Shannon West, and he is Chico West, like you said.
And I'm the No Filter.
And I'm the Filter.
And we are coming live from Kevin's studio. We like Kevin. Thank you, Kevin.
Yes.
My studio, your office. Thank you.
Yes, yes.
It's a
Very
combo.
convenient.
It's really easy. I really just walked right out the door and into this office. And here I am, getting ready to do another episode of Filter Optional.
Yes, yes.
A Casa Kalina production.
Yes, and you managed to get another no filter in here with us today.
I know.
Shannon, you're outnumbered. I'm sorry.
Just what we
I
needed.
am.
Sorry.
I am.
We do have a special guest. You know what? We don't need to have a little banter before we get going.
We can talk about
a little bit.
her and her podcast. So
Yes,
that's the kind of.
but let's real
Yeah.
quick. I have to say this before we started the show.
Okay.
Our special guest was asking, where did we go? We went on a nice vacation, and I got a new term. I love Vacation Shannon. Vacation Shannon is a lot of fun.
Well, Vacation Shannon doesn't have to take care of the dogs and the kids and the laundry and the cooking and the cleaning and the Chico and the everything else.
It's
I don't
so
have
much
to.
more fun with Vacation Shannon.
Well-
I want Vacation Shannon around
Well, it's not exhausted Shannon, so.
No.
Exactly.
exactly.
Well, then you need to take me on vacation a whole lot more.
I do. That's my goal. Okay.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
but today we have our special guest, and it's Wanda Means.
Yeah.
Thank
Yes.
you for having me on today.
And Wanda, tell us a little bit. You do a podcast too. You've been doing it a lot longer than us. What is your podcast?
Well, my podcast is called One Blunt Woman, and it has nothing to do with marijuana because I get that all the time.
I didn't even think
I
of
actually
that, but
have One Blunt Woman in my hockey jersey, and had a ref come up to me last Sunday and said, "What do you smoke?" I'm like, "No, dude. They're blunt before you millennials took over was a term for just,
direct.
filterless person."
Yes.
I've been sober 30 years, and they've been talking about blunts. Blunts weren't around. We just smoked joints. We hit the bong. We did those things, but there wasn't a blunt.
Well, now
you
it's
know.
called a blunt.
It's called a blunt. You
I
get
released
this-
my book on 420 National Blunt Day.
Yes.
Her original title was The Blunt Abyss. I'm like, everyone's going to think that's a show about weed. So
Oh my goodness.
Well, you might get more viewers that way. Anyway.
And then
I mean, I don't know. It's a
you
little
kind of come
bait
in,
and switch.
boom,
Bait and switch.
suck them in.
Oh, that's a good idea. Bait and switch.
Yes, or
Yes.
I like the term is, when you're working with people, it's like you're real nice, but then you kick them in the nuts.
Well,
Well, that's not me
nice.
typically,
Yes.
but I love y'all's name. I love it. I think
The
it's
filter,
ingenious.
filter
Yes.
optional. Well,
That-
thank you. I like
yeah.
one blunt woman that doesn't have to do with pot.
Yeah, and, mine is explicitly rated. What's y'all's rated?
No,
No, ours isn't.
I don't think
mean,
ours
she
is
keeps
rated at
me.
this point.
The filter keeps me in check.
So I can't drop any F bombs.
You can
No, you
definitely
can.
drop that
When we
bomb.
started, we were kind of waiting to see just how unfiltered he could be, and then we find that professionally, sometimes that because we can't obviously there's a ginormous amount of confidentiality in his business, and so sometimes when you're sharing stories, you just have to be careful about.
Right, because some people are you can figure out who they are easily.
Yes, exactly.
Shannon
So-
let an F-bomb loose for the very first time last
did,
week.
I did.
Yeah, she
did.
did.
What?
She dropped the F bomb
I
last
did.
week on our show.
Do you ever
I do-
drop the F bomb with your children?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, and I do it in private a lot. I have a sailor's mouth.
Well, you know what they say. You
in
can't trust
private,
anyone who
but-
doesn't cuss. So
Well,
I agree
okay,
with that,
Then
Wanda.
I like that. No, so I do. But then on the show, I've tried to, just because I can't help but my personality is codependent, and that's my problem, and so I can't help but think of the broad audience and some of my more buttoned up pearl clutching friends or something that might be listening and being like, oh. Well, I'm not sure I can listen to that anymore or whatever. I want them to listen to me, but
Well, I've
I don't care
offended
anymore.
plenty of people.
I-
I,
well,
I
I
started
know,
with my
I know.
blog,
You-
JesusDivorcingOver40.com, and then I just, people would be afraid to talk to me because they might end up on my blog. And then after a couple years of that, I started a podcast, and Kevin was been with me since day one.
I know.
Longest running
I
show?
know.
He's like my little
The
brother.
longest
I know.
running show.
Running show
I
after this?
really I
And I
value
watch
Kevin.
it. I appreciate. See,
Thank you, Chica.
I appreciate your honesty and bluntness. Like I love it. It's not my personality because
But you do
I'm too
like it. She
codependent.
does.
I'm too codependent.
She does
I care.
share that.
I do. I hate to say it, but I do. I think I care too much what other people might think and whatever, and that sits in my head. It's a cross I have to bear, and I have to figure that out, how not to care, because I really don't want to. Chico really doesn't care. You don't really care.
Well,
And
no, I
that's a
don't.
great-
Try living in Highland
No,
Park
Wanda
and
does
having
not
an
have
affair
those
on your
reservations.
husband, and then walking into games at the stadium. Everyone's, they're talking about you. I'm like, just because my information's public doesn't mean your private information that I know about doesn't make you a
Right.
bad person.
That's
You know, when we go to
exactly.
church, I sit on the front row.
What church?
Park City's Pres.
Nice.
You know why we sit on the front row?
Why?
Because if I sit any further back, I know people's stories, and
Oh.
I'll start thinking about them instead of
He
the
doesn't
Your
listen.
ADD sets in.
Yeah.
Oh
Yes.
yeah, and I start knowing everybody's dirt.
And people, did have one person approach me and think, literally, like, kind of call me out on sitting on the front row, thinking that we were important. And I'm like,
Oh.
okay, that's not at
Good
all.
God.
Yeah, really? That's
No, it's just because I know
Not
too
at
many
all.
secrets in this church.
I said it's so Chico will focus when we
Yes.
actually come, and they were like, "Oh, well, I thought that they'd like, you thought they'd reserved the spot for you, whatever." I was like, "Yeah, no, we are not, we're not
I
special.
just don't know if I could
You're
be
not
friends with
either."
someone like that.
I know it's tough. It was an acquaintance, of
Yes.
the sorts. Yeah.
But let's get back to the show. So Wanda, you have your One Blunt Woman show, and
Yes.
what brought up that show? I mean,
Well, I
just to-
started my blog, and then I wanted to expand. I wanted to get more readership, and I wanted to market it. And so then someone suggested I hire a PR person, and that's how I met Kevin. And they said, "Oh, well, you have a naturally big mouth, so maybe you should just have your own podcast." And so I did. So when I started podcast several years ago, there were way less. Podcasts
Yes.
have doubled in the time since I started doing
Oh, I
mine.
bet
It
you
was relatively
quadrupled.
novel concept back then, and now it's like everybody has a podcast.
yes,
So-
it's quadrupled.
But not everybody has anything important to say. Sometimes I listen to them and I go,
True.
"What the fuck?"
Say-
I mean, this is just, sorry. Should I not drop-
No,
Well, that's why
no,
I
you
change
can.
them. I
love it.
just switched to someone else.
Well, that's what we talked about last week, how I've started listening to podcasts on airplanes because I can't read anymore when traveling because
Right.
it makes me sick at my stomach. I don't know if I'm old or what, but so I've started listening to podcasts, and I made that exact point. I was like, I download a ton of them. If I don't want to listen to them, I just pause them or, but you're right. A lot of people don't have a lot to say, but I feel like we all three do.
Yeah. But so you started
say.
doing that. I don't know about you, but I've loved it. Like today, we had an episode air on marriage and fighting fair. And I liked it because I did a little research. It's like therapeutic in a way for me to do this podcast.
So how do you fight fair in a marriage?
Well,
You'll have to listen to our
You'll
podcast.
listen to the podcast.
I think I'm going to. Well, I'm not married, but I've been in relationships, and I can't seem to make them work out. But I've learned a lot from a lot of the therapy that I've done, and the big thing with people who've experienced trauma in their life is that they have a hard time organizing their thoughts, and they have a really hard time living in the moment because we're so focused on the trauma and we are so easily distracted because of the damage done to our brain.
Well,
Yeah, and so you've been learning more about that.
Yes, I
Did-
went to this place that you referred on site in Nashville. I went to a 7-day intensive healing, and it was enlightening. And for me, it was a game changer for sure.
Oh my goodness, and I love that place. And you just did an episode on it. What's your episode called? On
Insight at On-Site.
Insight at Onsite. That's good.
I do a lot of play on words with my
Podcast
titles.
Yes.
You can
That's
ask
good.
Kevin. We've named some really interesting
Yeah,
ones.
we
in
have some
the
good
past.
brainstorming sessions on how we want to name each episode.
yes.
Yeah, so you went there to just deal with your trauma and get
Yes.
some healing right there.
And it was 7 days. I mean, I'd like to go away to yours for 90 days, although I'm the
You'd
wrong
be the
sex.
only
I
woman
would.
there.
Right,
But I
yes.
did say the numbers would be in my favor if I went to your
Yes,
place.
true.
They would.
Big time.
But obviously I can't because I'm a girl. But so I only had 7 days that I could squeeze in between hockey tournaments and homecoming and life and everything else. It's when you're a mom of 4 kids, you can't just go away.
Right.
Yeah.
Believe me, I'd like to. So I
Yeah.
squeezed in the 7 days in the middle of October, and I learned so much. And I got to fight some demons that I had in a very emotional setting, I guess, in a safe setting where
Yeah,
you could
safe.
really be vulnerable. And one of this book that I'm reading, I'm showing you, I was telling you about, it's called The Body Keeps the Score. And it talks about, here, I'll show you.
Yeah.
You can see it. The Body Keeps the Score. It's a fabulous, fabulous read. And it talks about, the first thing we have to do is we have to identify the trauma. And so a lot of people don't even talk about their trauma. You know?
And a lot of people, we talked about, I don't mean to interrupt, but we've talked about on this podcast before that we've talked about little T and big T, like
right,
little trauma and big trauma. And so there's a lot of that people don't, I walk around with a lot of little T, I think, because like Chico has some big T in his life because he lost his dad when he was 10 in a terrible accident, things like that. That's big T. And abuse and things like that are big T, but the little T can be just as damaging to your body. And
absolutely.
So
and what happens is it changes the chemical makeup of your brain. And so often our amygdala, which is our emotional mind, and it is literally the size of an almond, the size of it and the shape of it. It's a teeny little piece of your brain. And the majority of your brain is your frontal cortex. So why is it that this tiny little piece can just control so much?
And have so much power.
And have so much power, fight or flight.
Yes.
Constantly.
Exactly. And, as Shannon was sharing about, little T, I think you have a little T, and I'm going to expose it right now that you don't even realize.
Okay.
But when you were 5 years old and you had that little surgery.
Oh, yeah.
That was truly.
Was that the first time, though, that you knew about that? Did
what
you
was
know
the surgery?
about that? I'm going to tell you.
Yes.
So I was in first grade, and I went to a friend's lake house, and we were out on the dock fishing, and it was like this, concrete pier with a jagged edge, concrete. And so we're fishing, and I stepped out, and I slipped, and I did the splits on the concrete.
Ouch.
And so I was bleeding in my private, and I had to go to I had to go to the hospital in the little ER and wherever little lake town we were in. I don't even know where I was, and they had to stitch me up. I had to get several stitches, if
In
not like
your
5,
private, in your vagina.
I'm doing a
area.
Kegel right now, just thinking.
Yeah,
about
I know.
that.
I mean, it was
Yes.
so.
I
Then
knew Kevin would laugh at that.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry. No, I'm not dabbling it, but I'm like, you just flinch.
Wanda, this is my little T I'm talking about. No, I'm kidding. So then when I got home, they weren't dissolvable or anything. It had to be checked on, and so I had to go to my pediatrician a couple of times, like to get the stitches out. I mean, so you're talking about a first grader fully exposed. I mean,
you're 6 years old.
and you've been
So
told
the first time you had sex, did it hurt? I mean, generally it hurts for most women, but I mean, there was no residual from that.
No, but I have wondered in my marriage as far as Wanda is.
That's good.
Now I'm helping your marriage.
Marriage
counselor.
filter. Oh, I'm going to start turning brighter and brighter red. But I have wondered if that has affected my pleasure.
Really?
Yeah. Yes, I have always.
Okay,
wondered
so
that. Because
should I go there?
No, it's not really affected. I mean,
you're able to climax.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
All that.
Got it.
It was really. It was more on the outside. I mean, of the anatomy. I mean, because I did.
But that is interesting how there could be.
That is a trauma. And
it is a trauma.
And she's struggled with that trauma. We all have traumas. And you were talking about, okay, you had to unpack some trauma.
But I've never
and to get
addressed
some
it.
healing.
So I was just thinking about things like, I think people need to know that they could go to on-site no matter what. I could, even though I don't have necessarily a big T, but a bunch of little T's.
Well, you didn't go off to Iraq and shoot a bunch of people.
Exactly.
I mean, that's a big T. That is PTSD. I don't have that either.
Right. No. Right. And so when you say you'd like to go for 90 days, I mean, I think that's probably because we could all benefit from that kind of stuff. But I just want to encourage anyone that might have some little T's that they don't even think about. We've been trying to teach that everybody has some trauma.
And what you don't repair, you will repeat.
Right. And so recognizing what that is in your life, I mean, you have to do some real soul searching. Sometimes it takes an intensive guide through the trauma. You know what I mean?
Well, for me, I've done neurofeedback. I've done talk therapy. I've done all kinds of, I've dealt with this. I wrote a book about this, which is very cathartic. I've told people, I've talked to people, and I've helped
Right.
other people, but it's still there. It still burns because the sexual molestation that I endured, I call it the cherry on top of the painful childhood.
Yeah.
So I wish
Yeah.
it were just that.
Right. Right.
Because I could get past that. But, you can't get past the abandonment and the neglect and the narcissistic mother and the one that's, there's so much just wrapped up in this pretty little package.
Right.
That,
right.
Well, and every human being, no matter if you have, the trauma that you've had or Shannon had or I had, but every human being and the people that have, PTSD from war and seeing people die right in front of them, we all have something in common. We all struggle with abandonment and inadequacy. And the way abandonment and inadequacy manifests itself is either through, addiction or codependency. And those will play out time and time again. And we try to recover from those if it's addiction by not, using with codependency by overperforming and stuff like that. But if we don't step into the pain box, we're never going to feel recovery.
well, and unfortunately, the higher your ACE score, the more likely you are to have addictions. And my addictions are plentiful because my score is a 6.5. Have you taken the ACE test, Shannon?
No, I don't know what that is.
No.
It's the
it's
adverse
good.
childhood experiences. It's 10 simple questions. Did your parents divorce? Were you sexually abused? Were you emotionally abused? Were you emotionally neglected? Were you physically abused?
Interesting. Yeah.
So, did your father hit your mother? Was there alcoholism, suicide, incarceration? 10 simple questions. And the higher your number, the more likely you are to attempt suicide, the more likely you are to have some sort of addiction. Those with 4 or more yeses are 90% of those people are on some sort of antidepressant.
Wow.
I don't take any antidepressants. And an antidepressant essentially is just to kind of level out your serotonin level.
Right.
And the lower your serotonin level, the more likely you are to be hyper or overreactive. And that is me. I am very reactive. And I just got out of a long-term relationship, and he triggered me constantly. And so when he would be dismissive or ignore me, all that did was stir up my
Amp you up.
emotions,
Yeah.
amped me up, and I would react. And he kept telling me, you're so reactive, you ruin this. And finally, just 4 days ago, he texted me and he said, I fucked all this up. You reacted. I am so sorry.
Yeah. Well,
And it was it was the most, it was the
Chico's
biggest
so
validation
reactive to- yeah,
I have
that's
gotten in
good.
5.5 years in that
Yeah,
relationship.
Yeah.
I like hearing that. But my little deal is he was pointing the finger at you.
Yes.
And what happens is if I'm pointing the finger at
3
someone,
fingers are pointing right back at you.
at me. And so the
Right.
deal is, do we pause long enough and step back and go, okay, what's going on with me? What's going on with me? How come, okay, she might be reacting or he might be reacting, but what part am I playing in this scenario? And so it sounds like he paused long enough and goes, okay, hey, I played the huge part in this scenario. I just kept fueling Wanda the whole time.
Absolutely, and he
Yeah.
knows it. And so, for me, what I learned the most, I will tell you, at
On-site.
on-site was you have a love addict, which is me. A love addict is someone whose father left, who has experienced abandonment
Yeah.
and neglect, right? So
Right.
those people easily become love addicts. So when you go with a love avoidant, that is the worst possible combo.
Right.
What I need in a person, in a relationship, you have to be love secure and he has to be love secure. So only two love secure people can make a healthy relationship.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just toxic.
Yes. Oh, for sure.
And so, but we all have issues that we have to deal with.
We do.
And I can't, and I am codependent too. And I say to him, well, I love you. What's wrong with me? Why don't you love me back?
Right.
Well, I do love you, but I'm going to avoid you. Okay, I'm going to come back. I'm going to leave. I'm going to come back. And
Right.
so it's this vicious cycle. Love that. So I went to on-site and I threw away love addicted Wanda. And I also threw away a bunch of other addictions
Yeah.
that were unhealthy for me. And so in order to have a healthy relationship, you have to have a foundation
Well,
of being healthy.
yes. And we talked about, so I had this kind of aha moment yesterday. We've been, the Enneagram. Do you know what your Enneagram, have you ever
I
taken
don't,
that
but I know
test?
what you're talking about.
Yeah. So we listened to some podcasts on the different types, and I know Chico's type now, and I know my type, and I'm fully on board and fascinated with learning about other people's types, because it's like you said, it's a basis for communication and a basis for healing. I think for a lot of people, because if I understand what gets him going and what he's an Enneagram 8, I'm an Enneagram 2, and I had this thought yesterday. I wanted to like put on Facebook or something, and I didn't because it was silly and stupid. But I was like, the world could maybe be a more peaceful place if everybody knew their Enneagram number, and then everybody kind of knew what the different numbers stood for. And then when you introduced, hi, I'm Shannon West, I'm a 2. Like if everybody could, hi, I'm Chico West, I'm an 8. And then I'm like, I know what I'm dealing with. I know what's going to trigger you. I know how to approach you. And then there can be healing from that, but there's a basis. And so when you were saying you wanted more than 7 days, what I'm getting at is that we can do our own work, after the 7 days. You don't necessarily need 90 days,
Oh, the work has to continue.
The
You
work
can't
just has to continue.
You're not going to solve the world's problems in 7 days. You're not going to solve your own problems.
Right.
But it opens.
But to be self-aware.
Yeah, but it
with
opens the door. That's the great thing. That's where I was so fired up for you, Wanda, because I love that you have a message and you have a platform now with your show and your blog and stuff like that. It opens the door for people that might not necessarily get help. That's what our deal is in doing this show, is like, hey, man, if someone gets help, man, praise God. That's cool shit. If they can begin to unpack, because all of us have our stuff. And the more I can recognize, man, I do have my stuff, and I bring my stuff into my marriage. I bring it into my work. I bring it into that stuff. And the more I can step back and go, okay, pause, what's going on? I'm like you, I'm reactionary. And so I need to learn more and more how to pause and not react and recognize, okay, what's going on internally here.
Well, we're not going to do any good in any relationship until we heal and love ourselves first.
Right.
Oh, hands down.
Yes. 100%.
Because if I can't love myself, then why do I expect you to love me?
Right.
And you're certainly not going to love me the way I can't expect you to fill that void. Now, what I've come to understand is that I want someone to add to my level of happiness. I don't expect anyone to make me happy.
You want a partner.
Yes. That you can.
In your joy, you have to have.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, and that's where I was thinking this morning when I was driving to Casa. I was going, man, what is it with Shannon? Is I say this is I believe, and I will say it truly, I believe you're my best friend. And a lot of marriages don't have that. It's more, okay, hey, they're friends, but it's more love. And what is love? We think love's a feeling, but it truly isn't a feeling. It's like
an action.
It's an action, and
right.
it's like she's my best friend. I'm glad she has best girlfriends, but you're the one that, man, I opened up to you a bunch this weekend about some vulnerabilities I have in my life.
Yes.
I don't do that with other people like I do with you.
Well, they say lucky is the man who gets to marry his best friend.
I love that. Yes.
Yes. Yes. But I think it boils down to, especially when you're living with your best friend. I mean, it's like a roommate or anything else, but you have to have that basis of self-awareness. Like, you've got to do the work. I mean, and I've just realized this. I mean, we've been married 24 years, and thank goodness we kind of grew together and
You've been together half your life.
It's right.
Yes.
And since he's a therapist, I guess maybe, he used to label me and throw things, therapeutic,
Put you in a
things
box?
at me. Yeah.
Oh,
The
yes.
box that you go in, this is you.
Yes. This is what I'm labeled this week, and,
Well, and the crazy thing is,
But wait,
Shannon
I was
is,
just
but
gonna
it,
finish
but
my
real
thought,
quick,
yeah.
this has to do with your thought. Is I've always seen you as struggling with codependency, but the last few years I've stopped identifying her as codependent, and she's embraced it. So I
Yeah, 'cause
got
I had to
away.
do- yeah.
She had to do it herself.
Well, if
The
you keep
more-
telling her, that may
just
make her run.
It just pissed her off.
Right, but now
Every
that
time.
she's self-aware, like you said,
right.
how do you spell that? Angio? Say that again.
Enneagram. It's
Spell.
It's ENNE.
Oh.
Enneagram. Enneagram?
I think it's
Enneagram?
ENNEA.
So you think everyone should go online and take an Enneagram test?
Yes, 100%, and go ahead, and then
I'm gonna have to write that down because I'm gonna look that up.
You can take it for free. Yeah, it's ENNEAGRAM, and it's a 15-minute test personality tests that you can take. I mean, I think you have to enter your email, and then Ian Cron is the kind of the expert. He's written a book, and he's kind of done the most, I think, research. He's kind of the expert on it, and I have his book downloaded on my phone because you can read about the different types, and you can pay on his website. You can pay to take a test, which I might do now after I've initially done this, whatever.
It'll break it down more.
It'll break it down more and
it'll
send you
give
like a 40-page
as well.
Well, but listen, so let me finish. And it'll send you like a 40-page report. But it has been the most eye-opening, and you dig for more information once you find out and then you read about an unhealthy, like I'm a 2, and they have a description of an unhealthy 2, a
average 2,
and a healthy 2.
Okay.
And so an unhealthy 2, when I read about it, it was me when I'm in all my codependency and just making unhealthy or whatever. And I was like, oh, I do not want to be that person. And it shows you how to embrace your personality. And then, I don't know, it is eye-opening.
So does that kind of align with what are your 5 love languages?
A little
bit. I think it's a little different. It's like I'm an 8. I'm still struggling if I am an 8. Sometimes I think I'm a 3. But an 8's a challenger. And so I embrace confrontation. I like that stuff. And so when I'm healthy, I'm
probably the
good.
same as you.
Yeah. And so a challenger's good. People are attracted, but when I'm in an unhealthy place, I become tyrant.
Oh.
And an asshole, and
see,
you might become
and
bitchy or whatever.
Well, and
No, women can be assholes too.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm a 2, which is the helper. And so I put so much stock in relationships, all my relationships. If I'm volunteering on the PTA, I want everybody I want my relationships to be good. I want my relationships. And that's an unhealthy can care too much what other people think, because I can't control other people's feelings.
Our relationships are what dictate our happiness over our life. So the healthier relationships that you have, the longer you're going to live.
But here's the deal with
if you're a 2, you care so much more about those relationships than an 8.
Well, and an
does.
8, but an 8 wants someone to be truthful with them, and so
Direct.
just direct. Just tell it as it is. And when Shannon is direct, if I'm being inappropriate or something, and she's direct with me, I like that. But then if she starts adding a bunch of shit to the plate
To soften the blow, maybe.
I just cut that crap out.
Yeah.
But for her, it's like I don't need to correct her in public. I don't mind being corrected in public if someone's direct with me. But if I correct her in public, boom, that's not good. So it's not it.
So what you receive is not what other people will receive.
Exactly.
What
That's
you
exactly.
like
Yes.
does
Right.
it mean, and so you have to stop yourself and say, okay, this isn't going to work for her.
Right.
Yes. And so this
they
would have
talk
helped
about-
years ago.
Well,
in
but
marriage.
they talk about Enneagram numbers in companies and in work relationships, and how you approach a coworker and all the. It's incredible the depth of how it, and then it all just kind of clicks and it makes sense. But like, for example, I made our kids do this, and I think Beck's a 7, and then Travis is a 3. So we are all 4 different numbers on the Enneagram, and it's crazy because it allows me to know.
But the 3, 7,
how to
and
help.
8 want like assertiveness and stuff like that. Total opposite of her.
But also, you are the only woman in your house too.
Yes, exactly.
So
But the 7,
does this number weigh into the male-female perspective?
Not necessarily.
not necessarily,
you know.
but like the 7 is an adventure seeker. Like life is an adventure. Everything needs to be an adventure. Everything needs to be an exciting experience for the 7, which is Beck. And for
But
me,
that's probably because their amygdala at some point needed some sort of dopamine high. That's why I play ice hockey, because that is a healthy dopamine high for me.
okay, see, this is what I'm getting at. I want to avoid my 16-year-old turning to something that is going to give him a high.
Well,
That's
there are healthy highs.
destructive.
No, I want him to. So we let him get a motorbike.
So he plays football, right?
Plays
dirt bike. He
football.
plays football.
That's a healthy high.
Yes.
Exactly.
He has
But
a
we let him
motorcycle.
get
He
a
rides around in the
motorcycle.
neighborhood.
He got
with
it when he
no-
was 15.
And there's no
I mean-
license plate or license. He has to wear a helmet. That's the only thing.
I mean, I have a fast car because I like speed. I
Yeah.
like that quick adrenaline rush.
And he told me, but I'm so careful. I'm careful and cautious, and my personality is not,
maybe when you fell at 5 years old and you hit your hoo-ha,
Yeah, I mean,
maybe that
I'm
has
a little-
told you to be careful.
exactly.
That was a childhood trauma
Yes,
that dictated your course of life.
completely, maybe. And so it's
But let's
crazy.
get back. Let's get back to.
Well, I think it's all.
It's related, but I want to get back
great.
to on-site and just
Okay.
the work. I like explaining this because I go to on-site every year. I have a group of men that I meet with. Miles is in my group.
Do you do like a 7-day?
No, we do a 3-day intensive.
Okay.
Just it's a leadership workshop, and we do our own work and we do the psychodrama and stuff like that. And I try to tell people, it's crazy. I might do work. And okay, yes, I'm doing my own work about maybe childhood stuff or relationship stuff or whatever. But some of the best work happens when I'm just sitting there as a participant watching others do their work. Did you experience that?
Well, in our small group,
Yes.
everybody had their turn. So when you
Yes.
tell your whole family story, and then they do the psychotherapy,
Psychodrama.
the psychodrama therapy, you get to watch everyone. But I will tell you, I was the last to go, and I did not want to go and did not want to deal with it. And then I did it, and it was you were literally walking through fire.
Yes, but did you walk through some fire when you watched others do it before you?
I got emotional with a couple people because they pick you to play certain roles.
Yes.
And because I had to pick them, and so they picked me. And a couple times I was picked to be someone's inner child. And when that person is, when we realized we didn't love this person, this inner child, because our parents couldn't, so we don't. But now it's our responsibility. I felt the pain.
Yes, and that's what I've tried to explain to Shannon because I want Shannon to go up there and experience it as well.
I mean, I went with 4 children, but I came home with 5.
Yeah,
So my friends are like, and you think the other 4 are a handful. Wait till you do with this one.
Oh, right. Oh, no.
This is the worst one of all.
Right.
It is. I mean, it's crazy. But then your adult self got to say, hey, come alongside me.
Right. And so
that's the cool thing.
this child is screaming, love me, love me, love me, and my kids don't scream that because, well,
Right.
I already love them. I don't, their
Exactly.
dad loves them. They don't have, they will never understand what it's like to go through life going, why didn't you love me? Why wasn't I good enough?
Yeah.
Right.
You've changed that narrative, in your kid's life.
Yeah. Just because the trauma that happened to me was not my fault, but it is my responsibility to heal myself.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're just going to take your unresolved trauma and put it on your children
Yes.
or other people in your life, and that's not fair to them.
And that's that victim mentality.
Oh yeah, my mother was a martyr all day long. Drove me nuts.
Yeah. And so that's the kind of magic that happens.
Well, Chico kind of realized that when Beck was 13, like 3 years ago. Remember at onsite?
Yes.
I don't want to tell you.
Wait, did you take
He-
back to onsite with you?
No. But his 13-year-old self.
Oh, okay.
He realized some stuff about his 13-year-old self.
That had nothing to do with Beck.
Nothing
As
to
I
do
was
with Beck,
just
but he
doing
was
my
like,
own work.
wait.
And I saw my 13-year-old self trying to seek approval and stuff like that. And I go, I don't want this to come out towards, my now 16-year-old. So this was 3 years ago. I was going, because I identify and connect with him so much. We have a lot of the same personality. And so it's like,
And y'all weren't connecting at that time because, he was 7th grade and,
Yeah.
he and Dad
In all
were
fairness, nobody connects with the 7th
not,
grader.
no, right, at
Especially
all.
if it's a boy.
You're exactly right, at
Yeah.
all. So,
and so, but
he just kind of had an aha moment with his inner child.
I'm
Dealing with your own son.
Yes.
dealing with my own,
His
13-year-old.
Yes.
Not your son.
not my
No.
son, my 13-year-old is like,
He was okay. Let me kind of reel this back in. But Chico was having trouble understanding Beck at that time. at home.
Understanding his own son.
Like
Yes.
like Beck would be like, get mad at him or whatever, and he'd be like, "Why are you being an asshole to me? I mean, what have I done or whatever?" And I'm like, I'm looking at him going, "He's 13. Are you kidding me? Like, don't get butt hurt by our 13-year-old because he's going to hurt you because he's 13." And he is going to not want to be around you, not be with you. And he's like, "Why don't you want to be with me? I mean, I'm cool, I'm fun." And I'm like, "No, you're not." So this was right before he went to onsite. He and Beck were really, and Beck was even sharing with me, like, "I hate Dad.
but I
hate
was
Dad.
going
don't wanna
through
be around him," and
to
whatever.
pause a little
Yeah,
bit. So
okay.
3 years ago, I was going through a lot of personal business shit.
Right.
And it was coming out. My child was coming
Right.
out sideways
Absolutely.
with my own
True,
child.
true.
My relation, same thing with my
Yes.
partner. when we went downhill, it came out through my children.
Yes,
And that's
and
not
s-
fair to
to
them.
them. No, and
Right.
that was my crap coming out sideways because
Right.
I had this. You've gone through a divorce. I went through a business divorce, and it was
Yes.
painful, and it was bad, and I took it personal and all this stuff, and it was
Well, my son's 13 right now, and I'm having issues with understanding him, and he's a boy. But we
Yes.
play ice hockey together, so we have that great. Not many moms play ice hockey.
No,
with their
that's
son.
so cool.
We have that connection, and so when we're on the ice, it's not a mother-son relationship; it's two hockey players.
Yes.
But off the ice, he is an asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably because he's 13, he's a boy, and he's my baby.
Exactly.
But so I think about, I don't remember Richard, who's 20.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember him being this way. So I think back, why don't I remember Richard being this way? Because I had a 5-year-old always on my hip who loved me and was in love with me, and I was in love with him. And I didn't think about my 13-year-old at the time because I had this cute little baby.
Yeah.
And that makes sense.
Yes.
So you've got no one younger
No.
to love on.
to love on,
And
and our
that's-
the 13-year-old becoming a man, you know, like they think
Right.
they are.
Yes.
But we can't love them like we used to because
We love.
they're becoming their own. I don't mean love, like
Yeah, I
physically.
know
I
what you
can't
mean.
just go up and kiss them and hug them and love them and squeeze them. Like, Mom, don't touch me. That's weird.
Right. Yeah.
No,
That-
but we have to learn how we have to adapt and learn how to love them in a different way. And
Right.
And
I
connect,
love
and connect.
and there's that connection because it's easy to love that little 3, 4, 5,
Yes.
6, 7, 8-year-old.
And all of a sudden you're
You know.
13 now. Wait, what? I can't snuggle with you? No,
and
Mom,
they're
get
full
away.
of piss and vinegar and all
And they
that
moved to the
stuff.
side hug because you have boobs.
Yeah. Oh.
And they're like,
Totally.
side hug.
Yes.
Don't want to touch your. It's weird.
Yes,
Every time my son says to me,
Mom.
Mom, don't touch me. That's weird.
I know. So true.
That I had never thought of it
Yeah. No.
that
they,
way.
Yeah.
that
they
makes
do
sense.
it. Mhm, I totally can relate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, you knew you
I
caught
knew.
on when they moved to the side hug, didn't you?
Yes. Yes. Totally. And then they're like, "Are you dressed, Mom?
But
Are you dressed?"
I
And
would-
y'all don't
didn't
have
care
girls, so when
before.
Richard
I-
started hugging our daughters, he moved to the side hug because he thought it
Well,
was
yeah,
weird.
that's-
He's like, "Oh, they have
No,
boobs. Don't touch 'em."
I don't like the side hug with you.
No, I know.
That's
I like
your
the
wife.
full frontal. Yeah.
I know.
Okay, that's your sexual partner.
I know.
It's weird with your children.
Yes. Exactly. Duh.
What if you had girls? You'd be
That
like,
would be weird.
exactly.
It would be weird. Yes.
But the cool thing is, I did my own work, and it's like my relationship with Beck has gotten better, and
Yes.
it's like I've allowed Shannon to step in areas that she needs to step in, and I step in areas where I need to step in.
Well, the first role in this book that I'm reading, that Your Body Keeps Scores, you have to understand when the triggers are happening to you. And the only way you can ever gain mastery over them is to first understand when you're in that situation that it's happening to you. So, like when my son rejects me, he's not rejecting me. That's ridiculous. And I can't be sensitive about it. Well, he didn't want to hang out with me. He's just 13 in his own
Yes.
stuff. But I take my childhood trauma and take it out on him, and that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I told Chico. I was like, you're not allowed to have your feelings hurt by our children anymore. I was like,
Yeah.
you've got to be.
And we can't
You got
At all.
at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can't.
So at
'Cause
that
that's
moment,
putting
your
something
amygdala
else,
takes
yeah.
over, your limbic system, get out of your limbic system, go straight to your frontal cortex, your rational mind.
Yeah, but see, my rational mind with my attention deficit disorder takes over that attention deficit. And so I really, for it to take over, I have to remind myself, okay, pause, Chico, pause. That's where the rational comes in, and not react.
Well, so often we're always stuck in our trauma because it's all we know, and we don't want to get out of it because then life would be so different.
Right.
Yeah, we get,
Sometimes you don't know what
Comfortable.
is going to hit you either.
at all.
And sometimes we just have to stop talking about it and stop going to therapy, no offense,
No,
and
right.
live our life. We've got to learn to live in the moment.
Yep.
So often we are stuck living in the past, and I can't do that anymore.
One, that's where I love for people, hey, how do you get out of self? Go help someone else.
Right.
You know, I like what you told me last week when I called you about coming on the show. It's like, okay, I got 4 kids to go home to.
Right.
You know, it's like
One of the
whoa.
people I met, her ex-husband had killed her children and then himself. And
Oh, good.
that is incredible. I mean, I'm like, oh, wow, I give a blowjob at 8 years old, but I get to go home to my 4 children.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Right.
It's all perspective.
it all is perspective.
But
and
we
it's
all
like,
have but I'm not going to minimize mine because hers is so
No, right.
great. You know, on such a whole different level.
Yeah, and she is at a completely different level, and we all have our own level. But at the same time, we got to step back and go, okay, I have my stuff. I can move forward, or I quit living in the past. Learn how to get out of self and help someone else. And those things will really, yes, take care of yourself. Yes, look at those things, but at the same time, step out and see where your experience can benefit someone else.
And that's, with my blog and my podcast and even my book to some degree, a lot of people reached out to me and said, thank you so much. You've really helped me.
Yes.
And that for me is very validating.
Oh, completely.
Yeah, because at times when we're even when we're not in our stuff and we're pretty healthy, we need at times those little validations, those little signs of, okay, hey, someone is listening. I can be of service to others. And you're reaching an audience that all of a sudden people are going, oh, thank you. And being blunt without smoking blunts.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and on my Instagram, which is One Blunt Woman too, I get the nicest comment was, so-and-so, you need to follow this woman.
Oh,
And that
yes,
is such a
that's-
huge
yes.
compliment, validation for me, because I am out there trying to help because people need help.
But when you are vulnerable too, like you are, and Chico and I'd like to think we are. When you're vulnerable, then people are like, oh,
I love Brene Brown stuff.
they feel such a relief.
Love Brene Brown.
I do too.
She talks about in Dare to Lead, we need to rumble in our vulnerability.
She's so amazing.
I love that, rumbling in our vulnerability. And
I mean, get out of your seat and get into the ring.
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And if you're not in the ring, then quit having fucking
judging and-
comments.
Yes.
Yes. That's the thing that drives me nuts is, hey, you can have a comment if you're in the fucking ring, but don't have any comments.
Yeah.
If you're over here on being the armchair quarterback.
I love when I get comments from How to Raise My Children and they don't have any kids.
Right.
Awesome. I used to get a book every year, and I'd be like, I'll just put it in the pile over there that I'm not going to read because I'm too busy raising my actual children
Right,
to read a
right.
book on it.
Yeah, I definitely would get criticism of some of my parenting techniques too. So like letting my child ride a dirt bike around the neighborhood
Or
when
go to
it's
ACL
totally
without
illegal.
us. I mean,
yeah,
you
I took my kids to ACL and
I
my
know.
phone got hacked.
I know.
I know.
I saw that.
God, I was so
and
pissed.
you know, I that's where
That
I
is
freaked out.
still dealing
that
with
is-
it.
I bet
Yes.
that is the worst.
Yes.
I mean, that sucks. I mean, I'm nervously laughing because that would have thrown me over the edge. That is such a
This
pain
is a
in
shout
the
out
ass.
to Venmo. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Because thousands were taken. I called my bank immediately. They immediately credited me. And Venmo, just when I walked in, sent me an email saying, well, we've decided since your bank took care of it, we're not going to deal with this. And this has no longer been, this is off our books or whatever they said. And I'm like, hello, did you catch it? You know where
You
the
owe
money
my bank
went.
money. Yeah, you
need to
owe-
go to that person and go, you stole that money.
Right.
They don't give a fuck. Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
just pissed about all that.
Yeah,
It
that
is
scares
crazy.
me though. That freaks me out.
Yeah, I mean, it's too much of a pain in the ass for them.
Yeah, I'm thousands.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
But ACL was fun.
Yes, we didn't go. We just sent them down there
Oh,
as
you
a
just said
16.
but your
Oh, he
son
wanted
goes
the
to
megabus.
UT. So.
No, we're
Oh,
talking
you
the
said the
16-year-old.
Oh, you said it on the megabus? Really?
Yes.
Oh.
He
Yeah.
said, "Can I go on the Vaughn Lane?" And I was like,
I'm not paying for a
No.
Bond Lane. You
What's
can go.
Bond Lane? What's that?
Bond Lane's
"It's
nice.
the luxury bus." It's
Oh,
the
I didn't realize there was a
luxury.
luxury one. How much more is that one?
It's
Twice.
100 away. So
Yes,
it's $200.
and her
What's the
hit-
difference? It has a bathroom on it or something?
It has everything.
Well, they have like
They're
a stewardess
big seats.
or
I
whatever.
mean, there's only 18
attendant.
seats.
They have an
Flight
attendant.
attendant?
Yeah, I was
Yes.
going to say flight attendant, but then I was like, it's not a flight. But
It's
yes, they have a bus
attendant.
attendant. It really is a nice way to travel because you can get a bunch of shit done. Like they have Wi-Fi on it, and so
Oh, okay.
other than going on putting your laptop up, getting on a plane, and whatever, you can. The second you get on the bus, you can like lay back
and it goes
put
straight
on-
to UT.
Yes.
Yes.
Did it serve drinks?
Yes.
Nice.
What if
It's-
you're underage?
You
No.
can't get them.
I was at Cool's Liquor getting myself a bottle of wine the other night, and this Highland Park kid's in there, and he couldn't have been 16. I'm taking a picture of him. I sent it to my daughter, and I go, so who's this? He doesn't have enough money to buy what he's buying, and he takes back the Tito's and brings back Smirnoff because he was $5 short.
No, I was-
and I was like,
I was at
I'm
the-
looking at the lady going, you do realize this kid's barely 16?
Right.
No, this kid was at the 7-Eleven buying beer, that a year older than Travis. Travis is still in high school. And he goes, "Hey, Mr. West."
Oh, yeah.
And he's
Busted.
buying his beer. And I'm going, "You're going to serve him?" Because he's a year older than my son, and my son's 18. I just called him out on the shit.
And so, well, I didn't know this
Yeah.
kid, but I'm looking at him going,
Yeah, well, I wouldn't have called him out.
But
I
that's
would have
my-
sent the picture to my
that-
kid.
I
That's
did
my
run into one
personality.
at Monticello, and I called my girlfriend, and she goes, "I know, I don't care." And I said, "Okay, just throwing it out there."
Yeah.
But getting back to the show, let's kind of bring it. We've talked about Enneagrams, we talked about trauma, we talked about on-site, we talked about Wanda and her podcast and her blog. Hey, this is a shout out from Filter Optional. It's a great podcast. Wanda's is. There's a lot of great episodes, and she is one blunt woman, and so listen to that.
Thank you for the shout out.
Yeah.
Yes, we like what she has to say. Once again, tune in to us every Monday at 10 on Facebook or iTunes. You can download and get the new episodes, and on YouTube. I just remembered.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.